You negotiate every day. Whether you're asking for a raise, discussing a price, or deciding where to eat with friends, you're engaged in negotiation. But most people think negotiation is about arguing, persuading, or even manipulating to get their way. That's where they go wrong. Negotiation isn't about winning or overpowering the other person. It's about understanding, communicating, and guiding the conversation toward an outcome that works for both sides. The best negotiators don't pressure or dominate. They listen, observe, and make the other person feel heard. When people feel understood, they are more open to finding solutions that benefit both sides. Great negotiation is not about tricks or intimidation. It's about strategy and emotional intelligence. When you learn how to listen, ask the right questions, and control the tone of a conversation, you can influence outcomes without creating conflict. This guide will show you simple but powerful techniques to improve your negotiation. Whether you're dealing with coworkers, family, or business partners, these strategies will help you get better results while keeping relationships strong. Let's get started. Chapter 1: The Power of Listening. Sarah wanted a raise. She worked late, hit her targets, and took on extra projects. But every time she brought it up, her boss brushed her off. Instead of demanding more money, she tried something different. She sat down with her boss and said, "I understand budgets are tight, and I know timing is everything. What would need to happen for me to be considered for a raise?" Then she stayed silent. Her boss hesitated. "It's not about your performance. It's just the budget," Sarah said. "So, if the budget weren't an issue, would I qualify for a raise?" Her boss smiled. "Absolutely." By listening and asking open-ended questions, Sarah kept the conversation going instead of shutting it down. A month later, she got a bonus and a raise. The best negotiators listen more than they talk. When people feel heard, they open up, and that gives you valuable insight. Listening isn't passive, it's an active strategy. When you listen, you gather information that helps you navigate the conversation. People naturally want to talk about themselves, their needs, and their challenges. The more they talk, the more they reveal, and that gives you leverage. If you interrupt or rush to speak, you miss out on the small details that could make or break your negotiation. Instead, stay quiet, ask thoughtful questions, and let the other person do most of the talking. Chapter 2: Tactical Empathy. John was trying to close a deal with a difficult client. The client acted uninterested and skeptical. Instead of pushing harder, John took a different approach. "It seems like you're worried this might not be worth the investment," he said. The client leaned in. "Exactly. I've had bad experiences before." John acknowledged the concern instead of arguing against it. This changed the dynamic. The client relaxed, shared his frustrations, and gave John a chance to address them. In the end, he signed the deal. People want to be understood. When you acknowledge their concerns, they lower their guard and start seeing you as an ally. Tactical empathy means putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding their fears, needs, and emotions. This doesn't mean agreeing with them. It means showing that you understand their perspective. When you validate someone's emotions, they become more receptive to your suggestions. Instead of saying, "You're wrong, try, it sounds like you have some concerns about this." What worries you the most? When people feel understood, they are more willing to cooperate. Chapter 3: The Power of No. Emma was apartment hunting. She found a great place but couldn't afford the rent. Instead of asking directly for a lower price, she framed it differently. "Would it be ridiculous to ask if there's flexibility in the price?" The landlord chuckled. "Not ridiculous, but the price is firm." Emma said, "I understand. It sounds like you need to stick to this price to cover costs." The landlord agreed. Emma thought for a moment. "Would you consider including utilities in the rent?" After a pause, the landlord agreed. By allowing the landlord to say no first, Emma kept him in control, which made him more willing to negotiate. No isn't rejection, it's a natural defense. When people feel safe saying no, they become more open to discussion. Most people are afraid of hearing no, but in reality, no is just the beginning of a real negotiation. When someone says no, they feel in control, they feel safe, and once they feel safe, they are more likely to engage in an open discussion. Instead of fearing rejection, embrace it. Make it easy for the other person to say no so they don't feel pressured. Then, once they've rejected your initial request, move the conversation toward alternatives. Chapter 4: Mirroring for Influence. Ben was negotiating a salary. The recruiter said, "The offer is $60,000. Ben didn't respond immediately. Instead, he repeated the last part. $60,000? The recruiter agreed. "Yes, based on market rates." Ben mirrored again. "Based on market rates." The recruiter started explaining the salary structure. After a few minutes, she added, "But we do have some flexibility." Ben had just opened the door to a better offer, simply by mirroring. People love to hear their own words. Repeating the last 2 to 3 words of someone's sentence makes them elaborate, giving you more information and control over the conversation. Mirroring is a simple yet powerful technique. When you repeat the last few words someone says, it signals that you're paying attention and encourages them to keep talking. This keeps the conversation moving and often leads to new insights. If you want to influence a discussion, don't argue. Mirror. It makes the other person feel heard, which naturally builds trust. Chapter 5. The Accusation Audit. Jake wanted to ask his boss for a 4-day work week. He knew the request might sound unreasonable, so he addressed the objections first. I know this might sound unfair to the team. You might even think I'm asking for special treatment, and I totally understand that. His boss raised an eyebrow. Well, yeah, that was my first thought. Jake continued. The last thing I want is to make things harder for the team. I'd love to hear your concern. By bringing up objections before his boss could, Jake removed the tension. Instead of resisting, his boss opened up. After some discussion, they agreed on a trial period. When you anticipate objections and state them first, you take away their power. People relax and focus on solutions instead of problems. Most people enter negotiations thinking they have to defend their position, but what if you pointed out the negatives first? When you call out concerns before the other person does, it removes the tension. Instead of being on the defensive, they relax and listen. This is called an accusation audit. By saying, I know this might sound unfair, you neutralize their objections before they become a problem. Negotiation isn't about manipulation or aggression. It's about understanding people. Listen more than you talk. Show empathy. Let people say no. Mirror their words. Address objections before they bring them up. Control the emotional tone of the conversation. Whether you're asking for a raise, buying a car, or making a business deal, these skills will help you. The best negotiation is the one where both sides feel like they won. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.